morning, everyone. Thanks very much for coming today. I'm Molly Starback, Director of the Office of Postdoctoral Services, and I'd like to welcome you to today's panel discussion on non-tenure-track faculty careers in the sciences and engineering. This workshop is part of the Academic Job Search Series. It's co-sponsored by the Graduate School and by the Career Center. And if you enjoyed today's discussion, please join us next Tuesday, same time, same room, for our panel discussion on non-faculty careers in academia. I'd like to begin by thanking our panelists for coming today, taking time out of their busy schedules, and Sherilyn's case running over here in her boots. We really appreciate you sharing your time with our postdocs and students. And our panelists today are Sherilyn Black, the Assistant Professor of the Practice for Medical Education and Director of the Office of Biomedical Graduate Diversity; Tyler Bletch, Assistant Professor of the Practice for Electrical and Computer Engineering; Jennifer Carbray, Assistant Research Professor of Cell Biology; and Arthur Mosley, Associate Research Professor and Director of Proteomics for the School of Medicine. So we'll start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves briefly, give us a little bit about their backgrounds, and then we'll start in on questions. And several of you submitted questions online, so we'll start from those. But we've got a small crowd, so feel free to shout out your questions if you have them. So, Sherilyn, have you recovered? Do you want to start? Or should we
I have recovered.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you guys for joining us. I know it might be a little bit early. So I'm Sherilyn Black. I'm an assistant professor of the practice, as Molly said, in medical education, and I direct the diversity office for the School of Medicine. So she asked us for a 2-minute blurb of what we do. Essentially, my job sort of has 3 main components. The first thing is that I do research. So I have a very small research group. I just have a postdoc, and then I have another staff member who does research with me. I do research, so I'm a neuroscientist by training, and my research is a combination of higher ed research, social neuroscience, and statistics. So I do predictive modeling to see if different educational interventions will be successful or if they won't be successful in different social circumstances. And I do that in relation to diversity. So it dovetails really nicely with the office that I direct. So that's sort of part 1 of my job. Part 2 of my job is actually directing the diversity office. So in this role, it's sort of evolved. This is my 6th year in this job. I work with all the department chairs, the directors of graduate studies, and the deans. So just to get an idea, so for the School of Medicine, we have a dean, and then we have a vice dean of basic sciences, and I report to the vice dean along with the associate vice dean of biomedical graduate education. And we work together to handle all diversity initiatives, local and national, for all of the 19 departments and programs. So that means working with the training grants, that means working with NIH, Howard Hughes, NSF, etc. So I have to travel a lot. I have to give a lot of talks and a lot of focus groups. Right now I'm working on developing a new RFA with Burroughs Wellcome, things like that. So there's a lot of sort of administrative work that comes with that job. So it's a very different role. I also do a lot of student support. I have over 100 students with my office. So I have a staff, total about 6 people that run programs, run workshops, professional development initiatives, things of that nature for grad students. And then the last part of my job is that I am the PI of the Duke BioCore program. It's the Biosciences Collaborative for Research Engagement. And that is an NIH grant that I wrote the 2nd year that I was directing my office. And so that grant covers the School of Medicine, the grad school, Pratt, and the undergraduate campus. And it is a biosciences collaborative to promote participation of scientists from different backgrounds and also scientific leadership. And so for that, we have undergraduate scholars, graduate scholars, and faculty training program, and there are about 175 faculty members in that as well. So that's a separate group of programs and workshops and staff to run those things as well. So it's sort of 3 different things that are synergistic. They all go together. Every day is different, and I'm really happy to take questions about any part of that when we get to the question section.
That's hard to follow. I'm way less impressive.
I doubt that highly.
So I'm Tyler Bletch, professor of the practice in the ECE department in the Pratt School of Engineering. I'm actually new to Duke. This is my 4th month here. And so my main responsibility is teaching and also trying to find the mailroom still, like that kind of stuff. So my background is that when I did my PhD at NC State, I actually knew I wanted to go into teaching more than research. And that was my intent. Along the way, I found an interesting internship position at NetApp. It's a storage company at RTP, and they're doing some really interesting stuff that I'm not going to bore you with. But they basically waylaid me. I finished my PhD while working there and went full-time there for a while, and I told them I was going to work there until I got fired or bored. And after about 8 years, the latter started to happen, and I decided it was time to make the change. Fortunately, by that time, the concepts like professor of the practice and teaching professorships had become much more common. And so when I did my job search, I was able to find a wonderful position here, and that's what brings me here today.
Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Carberry. So I'm a faculty member in the cell biology department here in the School of Medicine. I trained and did my postdoc with Peter Augrey at Johns Hopkins, and he got recruited to Duke 10 years ago. And so when he came to Duke, I was put into an assistant research professor position as his lab manager. So I basically did his whole job for him. So I wrote an R01, I did wrote animal protocols, progress reports for R01s. I had a technician, I had a graduate student. So I kind of got to test drive being a principal investigator. And then he moved back to Hopkins, and I've always loved to teach. And so I had to find my own position here, and so that's when I still have the same title, and I'm working on that. I need to be moved over to the professor of practice of medical education. But so for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been solely teaching 10 months of the year. So I have 2 months in the summer off, and I teach mostly first-year medical students and graduate students, and then I've also had time to do things like develop a Coursera course with a colleague, and we've also published an ebook. And I'm also doing a little bit of educational research around some of my teaching activities as well.
Good morning, my name is Arthur Mosley. I'm in the Department of Medicine. My principal role here, though, is as the director of the Proteomics and Metabolomics Shared Resource, or core facility, as you may be more familiar with the name. I came to Duke in early 2007 to start up the laboratory from scratch. I came here from GlaxoSmithKline, where I spent 16 years. There I was manager of mass spectrometry laboratories for the last 6 years. I was a transnational manager for groups in the UK and in the US doing proteomics mass spectrometry. So my position there was a lot like the position I have here. That is, I was doing work in support of a wide variety of projects that could come in from anywhere in the world. Here at Duke, I do support for projects that can come in from anywhere across the university, the School of Medicine, the Duke Cancer Institute. So I like to think of our role as a force amplifier for research. A sort of swag way of saying it is we do OPR, or other people's research. So like you're doing other people's job. No, what it means is, and this is what makes it really fun, is we get the opportunity to work with the sharpest tools in the shed and a very diverse group of applications, where we can bring our skill sets as mass spectrometrists, and in my case particularly as an analytical chemist, to work with biologists, clinicians, statisticians, and together create a project that is stronger than that could be created by any one of us alone. So it's actually, to me, a lot of fun. A little stressful sometimes in terms of juggling projects, but that's just part and parcel of it. So I came from literally a chemistry lab. I was almost born in a chemistry lab. My dad was a professor of chemistry, so I've been around chemistry labs all my life. When I was finishing up my, master's in PChem at State, I thought I'd been in academia enough, either as a kid or as a real student, and decided I wanted to get out into the real world. I was out in the real world for, I don't know, maybe 6 months before I was desperate to get back into academia. So I went and did my PhD over at, don't hit me, UNC. And so I guess I have degrees from State and UNC, but I work at Duke, so go figure. It's hard to win basketball game. But I never really planned to go into industry. I ended up at Glaxo sort of as default to stay in the area when my spouse was coming up for as a partner in a law firm. So I stayed at Glaxo and worked there, and it had industry provided a lot of good training for me, and I got to make a lot of good contacts, and it really helped prepare me for the job that I have here. But I must say, coming to Duke was like coming home again. I know Thomas Wolfe says you can't do that, but actually you can. Walking into the laboratories and classrooms at Duke was just absolutely wonderful. So I've really enjoyed the career path that I've been on. I am an associate research professor. Obviously, it's not a tenure-track position, but I actually think that there are a number of advantages in that I don't have to try and get all the money that's spent in my laboratory. I get to take advantages of the brilliance of hundreds of different PIs who are writing their projects. We help them write some grants, and we work with them on those grants. So it's an opportunity to diversify one's portfolio. And that's really led us into applications that we would have never dreamed of doing otherwise. So this type of work in terms of being a director of a shared resource has actually been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Arthur. And since you brought this up, maybe we could continue that thought. So what would you say are the advantages and disadvantages of this type of position as opposed to a traditional tenure-track faculty position? Do you have more freedom, less freedom?
Well, I do have the freedom to write my own grants and can pursue research that way. And we do some of that, although honestly most of that is in the form of instrumentation grants, where we collaborate with different PIs in order to bring in instrumentation that we need. In terms of flexibility of creating my own research program, that flexibility is there, but if it were to become a major part of what I do, I would need to be looking for a different position, because that's not what Duke brought me in to do. So I get to do some of that, and I get to work with a lot of different people. So I consider that to be an advantage. Some people, if they're not a tenure-track position, they may feel like they're children of a lesser God. But you know, there can be occasionally some ego rubs, but I really think that that's, in my case, it's not an issue because I get to take advantage of the situation in a positive way by working with a lot of different people on a lot of different projects. And it really helps stimulate ideas for new projects and new directions to take that lab.
I have something I could add about that too. So I completely agree about the flexibility piece. I know when I was in discussions about a faculty position here, we talked about tenure track or non-tenure track, and we actually chose non-tenure track because I was told, I mean, very clearly, if you look at the APT qualifications, none of these other things, this $2 million grant that I got, the office I directed, wouldn't count for anything. And you know, what would count, like Arthur was just saying, were how many papers do I have, how many grants do I get, and I knew that intellectually I was stimulated by other things that were very valid in academia, but were not necessarily only grants and only papers. And what I loved about it was they said, you can still do those things, but they're not the auspice for how well you're performing when it comes time for your promotions and your reviews. Based off of what your job is, we create metrics about success or failure according to what you're actually doing. And so the flexibility has been huge because it's allowed me to develop all different types of things I never would have been able to track down or to have new ideas if I didn't have a non-tenure track position. And like prime example is, I mean, like I said, you know, I went for the first 5 years of my job, you know, doing some research, not very much. Within the last 2 years, I've really gotten into it. But I can do all the same things somebody tenure track can do. I have a postdoc. I decided I don't want a grad student because I'm running my office and running BioCore, but you know, again, it comes down to, it's more of a negotiation between you and your department at that stage instead of you and the APT office, which is heavily regulated by the institution. So there's a ton more flexibility. And I do know, I can speak for Duke. Duke is very big on pay equity for professors of the practice. They're very big on, you know, like there are different ranks within the academic council, things you probably have never even thought about, because trust me, I didn't before I became a faculty member. But if you are a non-tenure track position, according to the rank that you have, you know, like professors of the practice, they're equal rank in the eyes of academia than a regular professor, an assistant professor. So it's not the sort of thing where it's like the assistant professor is here, professor of the practice is here. It is, they're here, one is tenure track, one is not. So a lot of it is about you also just understanding the types of ranks and the flexibility that comes within each different type of rank, you know, your benefits and things like that.
Yeah, we don't have the pressure of the tenure clock, but yet I feel like I would be pretty hard to replace. It would be difficult. I mean, not impossible, but you know, so I don't feel like I'm going to get a letter next
Mhm.
week saying bye-bye, because I do enough, have enough roles that I wouldn't be easily replaced. So I feel like I have plenty of job security, basically.
Yeah. One thing I like about the POP role is, at least how it was explained to me, is that your primary role is teaching. Actually, my understanding is that the rest of the practice at Duke comes from the arts department, where they would want to bring in like a dance or fine art, that kind of thing, where research wasn't their primary focus, but they need that strong talent. So that's why it's professor of the practice. And the way it was explained to me is that it's 70–80% teaching, and then 20–30% wild card. And that could be field research, in your actual field. It could be research into education itself, the active teaching. It could be various forms of departmental service. There's one professor of the practice in my department that runs a large chunk of the graduate school or the graduate program in that department. So you have your choice there as to how you want to add value beyond just the classroom. It's a trade-off. It's certainly not for everyone. I had an advisor that was working in computer security, and that man was waging a total war on research problems. Every breath he took, every action, the dude was bonkers. He would turn out boatloads of research and would constantly get press. That's someone who is made for tenure track. There's no doubt about it. And I liked and worked on a lot of the research, but I like more diverse interests. I'm really excited about student success, especially undergraduate student success, because, well, as I mentioned, I've worked in industry. I've done a lot of hiring, and interviewing is terrible, because you get, man, this is post-screening. I get all these goobers in that don't know what a mouse is. What's going on? So I want to make better human beings. So I have a selfish interest in better undergraduate and graduate education, which is what brings me here.
Can I say one more quick thing?
Absolutely.
The other thing I was going to add to what Tyler just said too is that the other beautiful thing about being non-tenure track is you can negotiate in and out of things that you do. Like, so I do zero teaching. I have no interest in teaching. I probably would not be a good teacher. My brain is a circle of confusion all the time. But I run an administrative group now, and so clearly that more than takes up for the fact that I'm not teaching. And so I think that, like you heard, he's directing a core facility. Whatever you're good at, I feel like as a professor of the practice, you can make that the primary component of your job and then add in these other components as, like you said, wildcard add-ons. And I just think that's really cool. It's, almost every POP that I know, like none of us have the same job. Whereas any assistant professor, you know exactly what they're doing, and so I think that that's pretty cool that we all sort of
And
have
it can
that.
be dynamic. You can add a project, get rid of a project.
Yeah, we can just chase things down. And I also agree about the job security piece. Each of us holds such a distinct role. With every PI at Duke, you can think of a million, professors who are all doing different types of research, and they kind of come and they go to different schools. I think if any of us were to leave, it would impact things in such a larger way than if just a regular faculty member who is running a lab left, because we hold such specific niches within the academic community here.
But if you're interested in pursuing grants, if you're interested in being a PI, you can do that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm doing
Yep.
it, yeah.
Yes. I just submitted one to the National Cancer Institute as part of their clinical proteomic technologies for cancer. It's a collaborative interaction with folks at WashU, University of Wisconsin, and UNC. So the opportunity is there, and it is encouraged. No one's ever told me what I should or shouldn't submit grants on, but you would hope that it would be something that would be in synergy with the other aspects of your job. In this case, applying mass spectrometry to problems within cancer, with the biomarkers of cancer. So it fits in hand in glove, and it's also giving me the opportunity to have some independent work, but I think more importantly to work with people from other universities to get insights into what they're doing, to pick up new ideas and new techniques with them. So it's really a sharing position, a collaborative position in many ways, in fact, most ways.
And Cheryl and I know you actually like to write grants.
I do. I am sadist, yes.
She said, can you write some for me?
Yeah. But yeah, it's not in my job. I mean, when I first started this job, it wasn't in my job description. Like Jen said, it just evolves according to what you want to do and what you're good at. I have, I think, 5 grants right now. And they're delighted because all it does is bring indirects and bring resources to the School of Medicine, which allows me to expand what I'm doing. But like Arthur said, it's directly synergistic to my office and to BioCore. And so I write grants to provide support for those things. And most of those things have to end up going into, they're grants that all sort of add into greater value. And the other thing I want to say quickly too is, you know, for most of you guys are basic scientists, I'm assuming, like most of us are. But a lot of these grants are actually sort of social science in nature, where you actually still have to develop scientific experiments and hypotheses, and you have to, you know, write them out, and you have to develop interventions and test the outcomes. And so I'm still actively doing so much science every day. It's just in a very different way. And I actually find that really exciting as well, to sort of be morphing, you know, the science along with the administrative piece.
We have any questions? You got it? Yes.
So you talked a little bit about job stability and like creating your niche so that they can't let you go, but
Yeah.
is there any way to, well, so he just left, but I was wondering, how do you like go from assistant professor of practice to associate professor of practice? Is that even an option? Are
Oh,
you
I
kind
can
of
tell
stuck
you,
there?
I just went through my review, so I can tell you
So you
about
do
this.
get a review, but not
Yeah.
like a tenure review?
So for me, they're putting me through the same cycle as if I were tenure track. And so, you know, basically this is my 6th year as an administrator, but my 3rd year as faculty. So in year 3, just like for a tenure track position, I got an email from the dean saying that they were going to do a review, and I had 1 month to prepare my review packet, and I can talk to you more about what was in that later. But you have to essentially prepare materials, and they convene a committee of your peers around the institution. So for me, there were other deans, there were faculty who I'd worked with, there were leaders around the School of Medicine, and they review all of your materials. And there actually is a rubric that exists, and it's actually on the APT website for non-tenure track faculty, and it tells you, very similar to you know, a tenure track position, there's a big rubric, and on the top it sort of says like, practice of education on the top, and on the bottom it says something like practice of research productivity. The one on the top is for non-tenure track faculty, and you'll see that the metrics are things like national prominence, administrative leadership, mentoring. So they have these different categories, and so, you know, I feel like I was prelimming or defending again. They literally like get together in a room, they read your you know, they go through your CV, your statement, etc. And then they had a meeting with me and talked about things I had done well and what it would take for me to get promoted to the next rank and what the timeline was for my promotion. So it's very standardized. I will say, not all departments are this way. We don't have a lot of professors of the practice in the School of Medicine, so this has been something that's been new, with them really making sure that they give me a very transparent promotion process, which I'm very grateful for. But, so that's something to ask about if you think this is a direction for you, asking them to make sure they do have a very transparent and standard promotion process in place.
Tyler, is it like that in engineering?
I'll let you know when it happens.
He's like, I've been here for 4 months. I don't know yet.
Yes, it is. So there are some more senior professors in practice that I've worked with in the department, and it's a similar thing. Professors of the practice are definitely a newer thing. So I mean, tenure track professor, that's been around for hundreds of years. This is not. So departments and institutions are still finding their way, but it is definitely like part of the promotion path that, you know, departments that have put any thought into this at all realize, well, hey, assistant professor of the practice, that implies that you have other words there. So there are paths being developed for that.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I
You're
need
transitioning.
to
Yeah.
start doing what Cheryl.
And Arthur, you're our associate, so you have moved up the ranks.
I did. I got my promotion probably 2 years after I came here, based upon the success of the laboratory in terms of number of projects that we supported, number of PIs that we supported, bringing in some additional instruments in a fairly quick order. So the metrics in a shared resource or core lab are a little different, and goes back to that diversification of the portfolio. And there, what we're trying to do is to show that it's had not just a deep impact in one area, but a broad impact in enabling lots of different departments and different PIs in those departments to accomplish their goals, to showing how that we're able to provide the infrastructure that they need for their projects to be a success.
We had another question. Yes.
So, as sort of a few related questions to the professor of the practice, that position in general. A is, how is it different from an adjunct? B is it something that, is Duke sort of unusual in that they have, so we talked about how it's kind of a new position, but are there more at Duke than there are at other universities? And my third question is, this sort of equality of the tenure track and the non-tenure track, when you're comparing professor of the practice to sort of associate professor or assistant professor, is that also something that you might find at other universities, or is that something that they've really tried to work on at Duke?
So I can answer some of that. So I adjuncted before. And the first thing is, you're asking a lot of questions about definitions, and that varies wildly between institutions. You could go somewhere else, and adjunct means president, like it's bonkers. Maybe not that far, but it is pretty arbitrary. In my experience at State and here, adjunct generally means, in engineering, maybe it's different elsewhere, generally means it's often an industry person that's working in an industry job that also wants to pick up some teaching. Or in some other capacity, it's a someone who's definitely highly qualified, but is picking up less than a full load, and it's just 1 or 2 courses teaching focused. Whereas a professor of the practice, which is, as far as I know, I think that's a Duke specific title. I haven't seen that elsewhere. I've seen.
Yeah, they have those.
They have those? Okay. I've seen teaching professor.
It's not regular rank faculty.
Teaching professor isn't?
I've learned all these, the
Okay.
ranks, it's a little traumatic. Yeah, so these instructors, right? You hear about like instructors, or like you said, teaching or research assistant professors, all these things are like regular rank or non-regular rank, and that goes to the quality question that you're asking about. And I know like other schools, for instance, have tried to recruit me for positions, and there's this big thing about what's within the regular rank. And again, it might sound stupid, but it does go back to this thing of like, what is your role on academic council? Can you hold institutional committee roles if you are not regular rank or regular rank? So some of these things are very near down in the like nuance of academic caste system insanity.
In that god-awful handbook you got a course?
Yes, there is a handbook.
And speaking of the handbook, I'm assuming it's generally accessible.
Yeah, you
here
can
at
find
Duke,
it.
the faculty handbook, it's very clearly laid out what are the mechanisms by which someone could be hired into these different positions and what is necessary for them to move forward. So there's a lot of granularity that's available online if people wanted to dig into that and look. Having said that, I think that within those guidelines, there's a lot of flexibility depending upon the individual department.
The main thing is, like I said, I just go back to like, if you think this is what you want to do when you're negotiating, just ask those sorts of questions. And they might be shocked you ask them, but ask them. I mean, like I know here, for instance, if somebody's an instructor, they're still faculty, but they are not getting the same benefits to their 401k as somebody who's an assistant professor of the practice. Like that kind of stuff actually does become very important. And trying to switch from non-regular rank to regular rank is also can be a challenge as well. So it's like those are the sorts of things that might not seem like a big deal on the front end, but then when you're thinking about your career long term, it's important that you get that footing starting out.
I'd also add that you want to find the unwritten rules at the institution that you're looking at. So I know at State they have teaching professors, and I don't know what the fine print says, but they really are integral there. And I know that other institutions where that's not the case, and it may not be written. The handbook will say things like they have voting on such and such, committee voting rights and this, that, and lay things out. But even if on paper you have all the rights, or maybe an institution where it's an unspoken rule, that's a teaching professor. That's
The culture, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Culture's not written down, and so that's when you are deep into your job search and considering multiple institutions, you'll want to take people aside and say, especially if you can find someone who's in the role you're looking for, really find out what do all the terms really mean here, because paper is paper, but reality is different.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, kind of following along the same lines. You've all said you're not scared of getting fired because you don't have tenure. But do you feel like your position is transferable to a new institution? And you were addressing that a little just now, but if you were an assistant professor at one place and you wanted to go somewhere else, someone knows exactly what that is. But I think your situations might be a little more difficult to explain, so you think you have that flexibility?
I'll take the first crack at that. I think that the position I have in terms of particularly the directing the core lab is highly transferable. And that there are a number of institutions, well, core labs exist at almost all institutions with wildly varying degrees of success. And by virtue of the people that I've been allowed to work with here at Duke and the resources that I've been provided, we've been able to be a success in our laboratory. So I wouldn't be concerned about, if I had to transfer for whatever reason, being able to find another position. I'm not sure that I would find one that I enjoy as much as being here at Duke, but I'm not really worried about that. Having said what you did about tenure, I would add one other point that perhaps you know, is that even if people have tenure, there are ways that
Yes.
they are not encouraged
Yes.
to stay.
That's
So
right.
I'm not sure how much job security there is in a
Yes.
full tenured position.
Yes. And at least we all, I mean, you know, I obviously strongly am, you know, very glad I have this sort of role, but I think what he said is exactly right. He sort of has two hats in the pot. He has the hat that's the faculty side, and then the hat of being the director of a proteomics facility. For me, same thing. It's like I have the hat of the research side, but I also have the hat of the fact that I started a diversity office here, and most other schools don't have one of those. So absolutely, not only are they transferable, but I actually think a lot of the people that I know who are constantly getting called by other schools and getting job offers and invited to give talks are actually people who are in roles like ours, where they see that we provide this specific service that the institution cannot find elsewhere. So I have found it for myself, it's a highly sought after set of skills.
I'd agree with that so I'm on that largely teaching focused front, and the EC department here in particular is fairly lean in that it's a small department. If you're not aware, the Pratt School of Engineering as a whole is of fixed size. There's prescribed limits on student count, and the departments then there can flex in their enrollments based on student demand, but it doesn't grow. Trinity is uncapped and can grow arbitrarily. The ECE department does instruction, of course, for ECE courses, but because there's a lot of crossover, especially in my subdomain of computer engineering within that department, those are service courses for other departments, including the behemoth computer science department, which means that like meetings where we decide like who's going to teach what are fully specified. Like there's not like, oh, we could go and do this and do that, and maybe you'll just take a semester off from teaching. It's pretty, it's a pretty tight schedule. So just by student counts and slots, unless people stop using computers or do a terrible job, it's pretty secure. Appointments, at least appointments for me are on a 5-year time scale, so that would be review cycle. Obviously, I murder someone within those 5 years. They could get rid of me faster, but that's the normal renewal process.
Yes.
So I just wanted to follow up more specifically about what the job search would look like. So are these types of positions advertised, and if so, how are they advertised?
Badly.
And how would you go about finding them?
Here's how I found out about this and many other things. I was adjunct at State, and there was a professor or teaching professor there that I was working with and learning a lot from, and she said, "Oh, all the teaching faculty job postings, a lot of them, they're on this piazza. The piazza, like the forum thing for classes. They made a class called Looking for Teaching Faculty." And yeah, and I got a link to this piazza. It's like a golden ticket. They are advertised normally, so you can go on. There are academic faculty's job search sites and so on, and they hit there as well. But this piazza full, I'm gonna get flooded with people trying to get on this thing. Is like, it's more informal. It's like, hey, this institution's looking for this. This is what we're trying to get at, and that's actually how I learned about this position, as well as there was a. I'll be clear. There was a teaching professorship open at State as well at the same time, which is unheard of. 2 teaching positions at major institutions that are geographically close is like bonkers. It doesn't happen. So I was very blessed that was the case. And departmental searches, they vary wildly because it's faculty with day jobs running them. And there's not like a giant HR department like a corporation would have. And so you'll find things like, oh, this position is listed, but There was a political shift in leadership, and we're not looking to fill it right now. But man, taking off the books is just so troublesome. So it's still up. And then later on, they decide they do want to fill it, so it just quietly becomes active again. So it's very much social and annoying, at least in my case, that was my experience.
Yeah, there's 4 of us that are hired to teach in the medical school, and all of us found our position by asking for it. It wasn't advertised. So it was one of those things where we provided expertise, and the Dean of Medical Education thought, yeah, that would be helpful to us, and so then we were hired. So it was kind of through the back door, and I had already been teaching when I had asked for an actual position, so that helped as well.
So jobs like mine are listed on, like widely listed like Chronicle of Higher Ed, like science jobs, all those sorts of things.
Academic jobs online.
It's listed in the regular, like I actually was just on a search committee for a position for Pratt that was a non-tenure-track position. We did a national search just like you do for anything else. So it definitely depends on the nature of the job. I can say for the School of Medicine, like I said, I'm on the PhD side of things and the basic science side. They're pretty regimented with the way that they list jobs and the way that they create jobs. They're very focused through sort of, you know, procedure and rules and all that. So they'll be listed the same way any other would. I also think the one thing that I think can be tricky, so like for instance, I've hired 2 PhD level positions in my office in the last 2 years. And because of the way that, so HR struggles sometimes, and this will probably come up during your next panel actually, about the non-faculty positions, you know, for people with sort of like PhD level people who want to be in academia but don't want to be faculty. Because a lot of these sorts of jobs can be offshoots of those jobs. So for instance, I was a postdoc. I started the diversity office, and then after 3 years, then they started recruiting me for a faculty position. So like Jen said, it was like, I was here, they saw that I was doing work of a faculty member in the midst of an administrative role, and decided that they were going to start recruiting me for a faculty position. But like the 2 people who work for me now, I think that both of those jobs potentially have the capacity to transfer into a faculty position, but the way they're listed on HR is more like a program director or something like that. So sometimes you also have to see what the long-term plan is of the job that's listed on the HR website, and that can be a little bit tricky too. So like he said, it just comes down to like asking questions if something seems like that's the direction it could be going in.
And I'll add to that, networking. I came into this position, I guess if you look at this panel, I sort of hold the mature wing with this gray beard. By virtue of the fact that I'd been in my career for a number of years and had opportunity to interact with a lot of people, the networking is what really proved key to my finding this particular position. Indeed, when I was back at then Glaxo Wellcome, the senior vice president of the division I was in came from Duke. He knew what I was doing, which parts of it was sort of novel. He had this new assistant professor that was looking for this type of work. Says, do you think you can help her out? So I did some work with her. It proved to be very successful, and that was great. 6 years later, that person, maybe 8 years later, was then the vice dean of basic research. And when they were looking for the position, she gave me a call and asked me if I'd be interested in coming over and interviewing. As part of their search, they were doing that, but it was actually personal networking and who you knew and what you'd done before that's really key. So it's real. I would really encourage you to get involved in any of the local societies that are related to your field. Get to know people. Stay there after the hours. If it takes going out and drinking beers or socializing or whatever it takes, just to get to know people and interact with them at a personal level. And that in general, I've found for a lot of the people I know that it is the personal networking that was at least as important, if not more so, than actively going and looking on websites and trying to find jobs that way.
And I just add that it doesn't, I wouldn't say like, okay, time to tactically schmooze. I will drink 3 beers and make these jokes. Like, you want to reach out to people that you respect, that are doing the kind of work that you want to do, and just talk to them about the stuff they do. Because if they enjoy doing it, they'll want to talk about it, and they'll want other people to do it too and be good at it. And that's how you make those strong connections. So I knew corporate like Sharky type people that would like tactically socialize, and that's great if you want to jump jobs every 2 years and work your way up a ladder for more dollars. But that was what I was looking for. I was looking for something that would make me happy. And that's where I think the more real connections are more important than, oh, that person has the longest title, I'll spend the most time with them, that kind of thing.
Did you have a comment, Jen?
Yeah, there's just, someone, she's had her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just asking, what kind of advice do you have for graduate students in terms of preparing for these non-tenure track careers, given that they're so diverse and that you fill so many different roles? Are there any sort of unifying principles that you think are useful?
I can definitely tell you, because I've been doing a lot of hiring lately, that the number one piece of advice I would give is, going off of what Tyler actually just said, if you see someone who's in a role like what you want to do, get as much on-the-ground experience, especially if it's an administrative role. So for instance, I have students, like the postdoc that I have now actually was a student intern in my office while she was a graduate student here for the last 2 years of her PhD. I have, because of a variety of reasons, I've learned that I only hire people now who have had direct experience working with an administrator at some point, so that I can ask that administrator, colleague to colleague, is this person prepared for this sort of role? So the mistake a lot of people make is that they only do like student-led initiatives. So they'll do like, student recruitment or student organization, but there's no way for me to be able to gauge how much that actually relates to a real administrative experience. And so I think if you can get somebody on your side who's actually already an administrator, if that's what you want to do, I think that's a huge step towards getting you a position. Especially, because everybody's got PhDs and that sort of thing. And you gotta love those talks they tell you about, oh, these soft skills, being in the lab totally applies. Well, okay, so yeah.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have an advisor who would let me teach when I was a graduate student and a postdoc, so I would TA in medical school courses, and then once I came to Duke, I was actually a lab instructor in a medical school course while I was running his lab, and so that was extremely helpful. Again, it was just the direct experience doing what I wanted to do.
So actually, you answered. Sorry, was it my turn?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Just didn't look back. So I had two questions. The first one was related to the question that was asked about the teaching experience. That you just, I think, answered part of it. So how much teaching experience you got as a postdoc, and how much teaching experience you got when you were here, as a lab manager and also a research professor? The other question was about the Coursera class that you're teaching. First one was like, what's the name of it? And then also, do you think that would help if, as a postdoc or as a graduate student, you get involved in those sort of activities? And then the third question, sorry, is related to what you said. Is there any sort of like opportunity for postdocs to get involved in administrative processes, or is it just what you mentioned was related to graduate students?
Do you want to go first? Or do you
Sure, yeah. So as a graduate student and a postdoc, it was TAing in a first-year medical school course, and it's difficult at medical schools to have a lot of teaching opportunities, but there were a few. And then yes, the experience I gained, some of the content I taught as the TA, then applied to the teaching. It was actually teaching a histology lab to first-year medical students here at Duke when I was a faculty member, and that's a big job that takes several people to fill. And so actually what I did my first year I was here, I sat through the course to learn the material, and then the year after that, I was able to be a lab instructor. And then, MOOCs are a potential way of getting some teaching experience or TA experience around here, because there aren't so many opportunities in the medical school. And again, it's just asking people. Mine that I teach with Dr. DeCoy is Introductory Human Physiology, and it's always running. And we always could use help monitoring our discussion forum.
Networking 101.
And I will say, I also teach in the Master of Biomedical Sciences program, which is a new program, and we may be looking for a teaching postdoc for the fall, for 2016-17, which could have the potential to then lead into something else. So be on the lookout for that, or if you want to talk afterwards. It's again, if you see someone doing something that you think would be interesting, just email them and see if you can chat and find out
what opportunities are there. And yeah, for your question, so the reason why I started the student intern program and now have started a postdoc program is because I did not think that there were opportunities specifically for postdocs to be able to transition into like administrative roles and things like that. So the way that the postdoc program is set up for my office is there are a couple things about it that are great. Number one, it's funded on hard money, so it's not a grant-driven program, which means it'll always be a slot the School of Medicine is committed to. Number two, it's the only one like it in the country because half of the postdoc is being trained on how to be an administrator. So it's not just about being involved with my research. You're actually getting on-the-ground experience about, you know, how to negotiate all these different things that you will have no other way to learn, pretty much, outside of directing an office at some point in your career. And then there is the academic component of the postdoc, which is working on doing the research that I do to make sure that the programs that we're developing are actually to the highest caliber that they can be. So I actually right now do have a postdoc who is also interning with my office. It's evolving. Like, I had never had a postdoc intern before, and she approached me and said that she was really interested in the work that I was doing and that she might want a career like this, and so I can always use more help, always. So I gave her a role, and so we're actually meeting next Monday to sort of like talk about, she gave me like specific areas she thinks she wants to pursue for her career, so I'm developing sort of a programmatic initiative that she's going to head and work with my student interns and then with my staff. So yeah, a lot of it is literally just asking. I mean, I don't think any of us will turn down help. Lord knows, we all need it, so I think we're all probably open.
I understand that for teaching, the way I got some teaching credibility and experience outside of the TA work that I did in my graduate work was while in industry, I just reached out to my former advisor where I went, and people there, and said, I'm interested in teaching. Are there adjunct roles available? And they're like, yeah, I hate teaching. You need to take this. Not that, but I started off picking up a summer course in the evenings, and oftentimes departments can schedule stuff like that in a way that works for a day job. So I would, I worked it out with my boss. I would get off at 4:30 2 days a week, drive down, and I taught a 5 o'clock section of computer such and such. And I did that, this course, that course, the other, onesie twosies for a few years, and that built up some experience. And I did it. I mean, they also paid me, but it was like, an adjunct part-time is like a pretty pittance of money. I did it because I enjoyed teaching, and it was a way to gain experience and have fun doing it.
I know some of the grad students actually are teaching at Durham Tech right now, and I think that's pretty popular because I think the community college environment loves getting people from Duke and the surrounding institutions to teach, and very similar to what Tyler said, a lot of them are doing night classes. So I know that if they're able to do it, I'm sure they'd be happy to have postdocs doing that too.
And Arthur, you had a comment?
I was just going to make a comment relating to a question the gentleman asked about job security, and then you made a comment about hard money. At least in my position in terms of directing a core facility, it's 100% soft money. There is no underwriting of the cores. There are monies that could be available to tide cores over from year to year as things ebb and flow. Thankfully, knock on wood, we haven't had to tap into that since 2008, about a year after we got established. My principal point is that just because there's not hard money associated with it, I would not be leery of it. Because like most jobs, they are what you will make of it, and gives you the opportunity to seek out your own routes to success. I would speculate, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of times when there's hard money associated with it, it may be a little more prescribed in terms of what you're going to do and who you're going to interact with. In this case, since it was soft money, we were able to follow what they had directed us to do, but it wasn't in that if you don't do this, you're not going to get these monies, because it was really more of, well, if you don't generate this income yourself, then maybe we don't really need this position here to do. So like a tenure track position in a way, which is all about can you support your lab, are you going to get enough grants to bring in and support your lab, we have to go through the same aspect. But again, to reiterate the point I made about diversifying the portfolio, I don't have to just worry about getting money from grants that I create. I can get money from grants that are created by hundreds of different PIs around here. And if you're going to be reliant on the ability of others to get grants, a place like Duke is really good. It's a really good place to be.
Other questions? Nobody's gonna ask the salary question?
No, not the exact salary, but related to the money. Like, what is the exact difference between hard and soft money? Just you mean by soft money, you mean grants that have expiration date that would be transferred in like payments. It won't be there at any given time.
That there is no guarantee from year to year that there's money that's
Okay.
going to be there.
I mean, so I can respond at least to what Arthur was saying about sort of being more prescribed. I mean, so again, this comes down to sort of like you said, it's all about the flexibility of like what you want your job to be. For me, running an actual administrative office for Duke, everything that I have in that aspect is on hard money, which means that the office now will always be there. There will always be money for staff, for a director, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that because of the way that my contract is negotiated and the way that the office is set up, I always say they gave me keys and a budget and said go build something, and that is actually what happened. I have no job description, so to speak. So in the essence that I will always be focused on diversity, that is very true. In the essence that it's hard money, but they've given me freedom to create something, that's also true. So, but I think that the benefit of combining hard money, which is my office, and then soft money, which is BioCore, is that I can think of new ideas that are offshoots of the main purpose of what Duke wants, and then I can use the soft money to sort of build things around that. So I know one of my staff members talked to me a lot about being concerned that her job was paid for off of a grant versus other people in the office paid for off of institutional funds. And I totally agree with Arthur. It's like if you're doing good work, and if you're doing work that is valued by your peers in the institution, and you have the ability to write grants, like I'm not ever worried that any of these people are not going to have jobs in my group, unless we decide we're going to go in another direction and not renew the grant. But in that case, I would have something else that it was being replaced with. So it is about, if you want grants, you want things that are grant funded, if you have ideas, it's just about, it's like everything else, a peer review process of other people thinking your ideas are cool and then getting them funded.
And let me ask about this, a question that always comes up. So we hear a lot about work-life balance in academia. How do you feel that compares, contrasts to traditional tenure-track positions in your jobs?
I work a lot. I'm not going to lie to you.
So do I.
Yeah.
If you ask my wife, I work way too much.
Yeah.
So the work-life balance, I think, is really a question also, not just how much time you spend at work, but how much do you enjoy work, and how much does that make what you do after hours fun?
It doesn't feel like work, right? Like that's the thing.
You're doing something, the key is to find somebody that's going to pay you to do something that you do anyway.
The thing about work-life, so in a position like these, okay, we're all different, at least in a position like mine, it's not like you have a boss that is going to judge you if you're not putting in enough hours. It's about the success criteria for the job, which is, in my case, quality education and additional initiatives that will move the department forward. And if you can do that if I could, in 1 hour, teach all my courses and have a great, additional value to the department, and then go home, they'd be like, all right, there you go, cool, full review, here's
That's
your promotion.
right. Yep.
And if it may take more than an hour. So far, I've gotten it to under an hour, but no. So really, it's the you know what the set of expectations are, and you fulfill them as you see fit, and so you create your own work-life balance. I came from industry, so in a corporate job, you have many aspects of schedule and deadline are not set by you, and oftentimes are set by stupid things, stupid people. External things can't be stupid. External things and stupid people, and that can create, artificial emergencies and fires and things. Not that there aren't emergencies and fires in these positions, but they're at least more predictable here, or you're more responsible for them. So I think it's actually better for work-life balance than a big corporate kind of job.
I can tell you all, I remember when I was signing my contract, I had on my little suit and I was like getting ready, and I asked them, like, in your own words, can you tell me like what should I be doing as a faculty member? And the answer I got, I promise you, it was to be excellent. And I said, can you elaborate? And they said, use your brain every day, whatever that looks like means you're doing your job well. And that is so true. I mean, there are times, I completely agree. Like there are times where I'm working full out because I have a crazy idea that I want to do, and I'm running a grant, or I'm, developing a new workshop, or I'm going to be gone for many weeks, and it's like, that's fine. Then I have other times where I take time off because I've been working like crazy. I think the biggest thing is being a faculty member is the epitome of like intellectual indulgence, where you really have to be responsible and make sure that you're keeping up with your own stuff, because there's nobody that's going to be behind you that's like sort of holding your hand and saying, now did you do this? Because in 3 years you're going to be getting reviewed. It's like, you just have to be a self-starter. You just have to be responsible for getting your own stuff done. And that might mean that you're very strict with yourself and you have a really, I work from this hour to this hour, or it might mean it sort of ebbs and flows, but it's just really up to you. There truly is no sort of, restriction about hours.
Yeah. And there's the flexibility with that, having the tenure clock
That's right.
as well.
Yep.
Then you have the flexibility. So I have obviously times when I'm teaching I have to be here, but I have 2 kids that are doing all sorts of activities, and so I can leave when I need to go take my daughter to ballet. It might mean I'm going to need to be working later in the night, but the flexibility is really amazing. And if I decide, okay, I have too many commitments, I'm not going to start this research project this semester, I'm going to wait till next year, that's
No
completely
problem.
my choice. It will probably mean that I will delay my promotion, but that's the balance of it all.
And you
So-
delaying your promotion does not mean you will no longer have a job at the university, which is what it means if you're tenure track and you delay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It also opens the door to, so I volunteer with a high school robotics team, and that's not departmental in any way. I've been doing that before I got here, and I can make the time for that because you can make the time for the projects you want. When I got the job, I called him, hey, I got this job at Duke. Oh, it's so great. Have you met your boss? Is you going to work well with him?
You're like, what does that
The
even mean?
department head? Yeah, I guess, like on paper, but no, that's not like a thing.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've reached the end of our time, so on that note, let's thank our panelists.
Good luck.